The American Revolution and the Battle of Piqua.
Since childhood, we have been taught about the Revolutionary War battles of Bunker Hill and Yorktown, but the Battle of Piqua may have slipped our educators' notice. It was the largest military engagement of the Revolutionary War west of the Allegheny Mountains and would become a great influence to a 12-year-old boy named Tecumseh. The Shawnee had settled near the Mad River in 1754. They were known as fierce warriors, aggressive and proud. This settlement was the combination of two Shawnee towns, Piqua and Kispoko, but altogether these villages were known as the Piqua. In this time, the community expanded with over 50 well-built log homes surrounded by 800 acres of corn. Piqua spread out even larger with the arrival of the Mingo, Wyandot, and Delaware tribes until the village supported over 4,000. The British built a triangular stockade as well as making improvements in other village fortifications. With this massive food base and the British support, war parties were free to attack American forts and settlements in Kentucky. Kentucky had suffered greatly from the Shawnee raids in June 1780, and General George Rogers Clark of the Continental Army decided it was time to take the fight to their homeland. His invasion across the Ohio would lead to the largest battle west of the Appalachians during the American Revolution. Led by Brigadier General George Rogers Clark, over 1,000 soldiers, among them Daniel Boone and Simon Kenton, crossed the Ohio River near present-day Cincinnati, and they burned 5 Shawnee villages, including Old Chillicothe, along the Little Miami River. After burning the Shawnee village of Chillicothe, Clark and his army of 1,000 angry Kentucky militiamen moved on to Piqua, about 12 miles to the northeast. Piqua sat on a bluff overlooking the Mad River. It was the main Shawnee village in the region, and it held roughly about 3,000 to 4,000 people. As with most Shawnee villages, it was surrounded by an acre, more than an acre, just acres and acres of corn. It was here that several hundred Shawnee, spearheaded by old Simon Girty, made their stand. Girty was a notorious guerrilla fighter with the background only found on the American frontier. In 1756, at the age of 15, Simon was taken captive by a raiding party of Ohio Senecas and spent the next 7 years being raised by Guyusata, the tribe's chief. It was 1764 when Simon was returned in a prisoner exchange at the end of Pontiac's rebellion, but Girty found he preferred the Indian way of life. Girty fought alongside George Rogers Clark, Daniel Boone, and Daniel Morgan during Lord Dunmore's War, and initially joined the American cause at the outbreak of the Revolutionary War. However, in 1778, when expeditions were being planned to destroy Indian villages in the Ohio country, Girty then switched sides and soon was leading attacks on the Kentuckians with a vengeance. As Clark and his army approached the Piqua, Girty was anxious to test himself against the notorious Clark and prove his Indian followers that he, Simon Girty, was the better fighter. He placed 50 Shawnee warriors in a blockhouse adjacent to the palisade wall that surrounded the Piqua, and he deployed the rest into the woods behind the breastwork of the fallen logs. On August 8th, Clark attacked entrenched the Indians, who then fought fiercely defending their homes. The Americans made little progress until Clark brought his cannons into play and unloaded a merciless assault onto the blockhouse, the strong point of the Indians' defenses. The Shawnee fled out the back door as cannonballs turned the front walls of the structure into shambles. The remaining warriors retreated out of rifle shot and conceded the town to the Americans, who proceeded to destroy everything of value at the Piqua, including its houses and 800 acres of cornfields. Although Kentucky militiamen held the battlefield, their victory had been costly, with over 30 men killed and many more wounded. The Battle of Piqua would prove to be the largest engagement in terms of number of participants of any battle west of the Appalachian Mountains during the American Revolution. Despite losing over 100 warriors and all of their possessions, the Indians were not discouraged. If anything, they were more enraged than ever, and their bloody assaults on the Kentucky settlements would continue the following year. September 1781 was a terrifying month for this area. Indians had been massing across the Ohio. Anticipation of the return of George Rogers Clark to Kentucky had begun. The Indians knew Clark was recruiting troops for a campaign to finally capture the British post at Detroit and put an end to their inciting the Indians to raid the Kentucky settlements. The British sent celebrated Mohawk chief Joseph Brant from New York to whip up the Western Indians to defeat Clark. Commissioned in the British Army, he was known as Captain Joseph Brant, but his atrocities had earned him the nickname Monster Brant by the Americans. George Rogers Clark returned down the Ohio River in mid-August 1781, much to the relief of Kentucky, but without enough men for his planned Detroit campaign. So Clark's descent of the Ohio drew Indians like a magnet, but Clark's mystique was so great that nothing Joseph Brant could do could coax Indians into attacking him. The pent-up fury of the Indians was instead directed at Colonel Archibald Lockery and 100 men descending upon the river a few days behind Clark. On August 24th, Brant's Indians totally defeated Lockery on the north shore of the Ohio in present-day Indiana, killing 37 men and capturing 64, without a single Indian casualty. After Lockery's defeat, Captain Joseph Brant was joined by 100 British Rangers, along with 300 Indians, under the direction of Captain Alexander McKee. On August 28th, a little over 2 weeks before the Long Run massacre, this loose force of nearly 500 Indians and British proceeded down the Ohio towards the falls. The Indians arrived at the mouth of the Kentucky River on September 5th, but they soon lost all enthusiasm for attacking Clark at the falls, after scouts returned with prisoners who informed that no expedition was to be carried out this season against their villages. Although the Indians quickly broke off into small groups and started to fan out and plunder cabins and steal horses, the Long Run massacre occurred on 13th of September 1781 at the intersection of Floyd's Fork Creek with Long Run Creek along the Falls Trace, a trail in what is now eastern Jefferson County, Kentucky. A day earlier, settlers at Painted Stone Station, established by Squire Boone, had learned that the fort was about to be raided by a large Indian war party under the command of Loyalist Captain Alexander McKee, a British Indian Department officer and merchant. Most chose to abandon the station for the better defended ones near Beargrass Creek and had left injured Boone and one other family behind. Some settlers hesitated days before moving towards Lynn Station. Following the loss of their party of the military guard, the party was ambushed at 13 Mile Tree, 8 miles from Lynn Station. At least 7 settlers were killed. Indian losses are unknown. The survivors fled and reached Lynn Station by nightfall. Despite historical markers, at least one published report indicated that 60 people were killed. Only a few escaped, but only about 15 settlers were actually killed, followed by 17 soldiers under Colonel John Floyd, who were attacked the following day when they went to bury their remains. The Battle of Blue Licks, fought on August 19, 1782, was one of the last battles of the American Revolutionary War. The battle occurred 10 months after Lord Cornwallis's surrender at Yorktown, which had effectively ended the war in the East. On a hill next to Licking River, what is now Robertson County, Kentucky, a force of 50 loyalists along with 300 Indian warriors ambushed and routed 182 Kentucky militiamen who were partially led by Daniel Boone. It was the last victory for the loyalists and natives during the Frontier War. British, loyalist, and native forces would engage in fighting with American forces once more the following month in Wheeling, West Virginia, during the siege of Fort Henry. The Revolutionary War ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which resulted in the establishment of the United States of America as an independent nation, which was recognized by the Great Britain and other nations of the world. Well, thank you guys for checking out this video. And if you like this video and videos like this, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, push the like button, and share this video with your friends. And as always, remember to get out there and explore. Thanks, guys.